He stood there, under the harsh fluorescent lights, his weathered hands trembling as the store manager's voice cut through the air like a blade. 97 years old, and Harold Mitchell had never been so humiliated in his life. The security guard had his arm, not rough, but firm enough that everyone in the checkout lanes could see, could judge, could assume. The manager was loud, deliberately loud, his finger jabbing toward Harold's worn canvas shopping bag. "Sir, I'm going to need you to come with me, now." And in that moment, with 20 pairs of eyes burning into his stooped frame, Harold felt something inside him crack. He'd survived the Korean War, buried his wife of 68 years, raised 4 children on a factory wage. But this? Being marched through Schmidt's family grocery like a common criminal while strangers whispered and pulled out their phones? This was different. This was the kind of shame that follows you home and sits with you in the dark. What those security cameras captured in the next 11 minutes would make the evening news. It would go viral. It would make grown men cry and send an entire community into an uproar. But right now, in this moment, Harold just wanted to disappear. The morning had started like every Tuesday for the past 3 years. Harold woke at 5:30, exactly as he had during his 42 years at the Riverside Steel Mill. His body didn't need an alarm anymore. It just knew. The small ranch house on Maple Street was quiet, too quiet, the way it had been since Margaret passed. He'd made his coffee in the same chipped mug she'd given him in 1959, the one that said, "World's Best Dad," in faded letters. His hands weren't as steady as they used to be. Parkinson's, the doctor had called it 2 years ago. Some days were better than others. Today was an in-between day. He dressed slowly, carefully. Flannel shirt, khaki pants, the brown cardigan Margaret had knit him during one of those long Indiana winters. His daughter Linda kept offering to take him shopping, to buy him new clothes, but these were comfortable. These were his. He looped his veteran's cap onto his head, the one with the Korean War emblem stitched on the front, and grabbed his canvas bag from the hook by the door. The same bag he'd carried groceries in for decades because Margaret always said plastic was wasteful. The walk to Schmidt's was 8 blocks. His doctor said he shouldn't walk that far alone anymore, but Harold didn't like being told what he couldn't do. Besides, the morning air was crisp, autumn leaves scattered across the sidewalk in shades of amber and rust. Kids were heading to school, their voices bright and careless. A young mother smiled at him as she pushed a stroller past. Harold tipped his cap. Small things, normal things, the rhythm of a life well lived. Schmidt's family grocery had been a fixture on Main Street since 1962. Harold remembered when Old Man Schmidt had cut the ribbon at the grand opening, how the whole town had turned out. Now his grandson ran it, a man named Derek, who Harold had seen around but never really spoke to. The store had changed over the years, gotten bigger, brighter, more modern, but Harold still knew where everything was. Bread in aisle 3, canned soup in aisle 5, the pharmacy counter in the back where he picked up his prescriptions. He grabbed a cart even though he didn't need much. The cart helped him balance. His list was simple, written in Margaret's handwriting from 3 years ago, the last list she ever made before the stroke. He couldn't bring himself to throw it away, so he just crossed things off and added new items in the margins. Milk, bread, eggs, soup, his pills. The store was busy for a Tuesday morning. Retirees mostly, people like him who'd learned to shop when the crowds were thin. Harold took his time, moving slowly down each aisle. His legs ached, but he'd never complain. Complaining was for quitters, his father used to say. He selected a loaf of whole wheat bread and checked the expiration date the way Margaret had taught him. Grabbed 2 cans of chicken noodle soup, the low-sodium kind because of his blood pressure. A gallon of milk, a small container of eggs. At the pharmacy counter, he waited his turn. The young pharmacist, a kind girl named Amy who always asked about his grandchildren, smiled when she saw him. "Mr. Mitchell." "Right on time as always." She retrieved his prescriptions, 3 bottles, small orange cylinders filled with pills that kept his heart beating steady, his blood pressure manageable, his tremors somewhat controlled. The copay was $43. Harold counted out the bills carefully from his worn leather wallet, then added the bottles to his cart. He was heading toward the checkout when he felt it, the sudden urgent pressure in his bladder. Getting old meant your body didn't wait anymore. It demanded. He glanced toward the restrooms at the front of the store, then down at his cart with his groceries and medications. The checkout lines were long, snaking back into the aisles. If you left his cart, someone might think it was abandoned, might put his items back. Harold made a decision. He grabbed his canvas bag from the cart, carefully placed his 3 prescription bottles inside, the most important items, the ones he absolutely needed, and tucked the bag under his arm. He'd run to the restroom quick, come back for the cart, then check out. Simple, practical. Except it wasn't. He was 3 steps from the restroom door when the hand landed on his shoulder. Heavy. Authoritative. Harold turned, confused, and found himself looking up at a security guard he'd never seen before. Young guy, maybe 30, with a shaved head and a jaw that looked like it had been chiseled from granite. The name tag read Vince. "Excuse me, sir. I need you to stop right there." Harold blinked. I'm just going to the restroom. I need you to come with me." Vince's hand dropped to Harold's arm, fingers wrapping around the thin limb with practiced firmness. Harold's heart started hammering in his chest. People were staring. A woman with 2 small children had stopped mid-stride, her eyes wide. An elderly couple near the produce section had gone silent, watching. "There's been a misunderstanding," Harold said, his voice shaking. "I was just going to the restroom. My card is right there. You can see." "Save it for the manager." Vince was already walking, pulling Harold along with him. Not violent, not cruel, but loud enough that people turned, loud enough that the whispers started. They walked past the checkout lanes, past customers who stopped loading their groceries onto the belt to watch, past the teenage cashier whose mouth had fallen open. Harold's canvas bag bumped against his side with each step, the prescription bottles rattling inside, his veteran's cap set crooked on his head. His legs struggled to keep up with Vince's purposeful stride. The manager's office was at the back of the store, past the swinging doors marked "Employees Only." But Vince didn't take him there. Instead, he steered Harold toward the customer service counter at the front, the most visible spot in the entire store. Harold's stomach dropped. Derek Schmidt emerged from somewhere in the back, his face already set in an expression of grim authority. He was maybe 45, wearing a white button-down with the store logo embroidered on the pocket. His hairline was receding, and his eyes were cold. He looked at Harold like you'd look at a problem that needed solving. "This him?" Derek asked Vince. "Yep." Caught him heading for the door with merchandise. "I wasn't—" But Derek held up a hand. "Sir, I'm going to need you to show me what's in that bag." Harold's hands were shaking badly now, the Parkinson's amplified by adrenaline and humiliation. He fumbled with the canvas bag, nearly dropped it, finally managed to open it. He pulled out the 3 prescription bottles one by one, setting them on the counter. "These are mine. My medications. I was just going to the restroom before I checked out. My card is right there, you can see." "Do you have a receipt for these?" Derek's voice was flat, bored almost.
No. I just picked them up from the pharmacy. Amy can tell you. She just gave them to me 5 minutes ago." "So you don't have a receipt?" "I haven't checked out yet. I told you I was going to the restroom first." Derek picked up one of the bottles, examined it. "These are expensive medications, sir. Were you planning to pay for them?" The question landed like a slap. Harold felt heat flood his face. "Of course I was going to pay. I always pay. I've been shopping here for 60 years. "Sir, I need you to calm down." Derek set the bottle down with a deliberate click. "We have a zero-tolerance policy for theft. I don't care if you're 97 or 17. Theft is theft." "I'm not a thief." Harold's voice cracked, loud enough that people at the nearest checkout turned to look. "I have money right here." He fumbled for his wallet, his trembling fingers struggling with the leather fold. Bills spilled out onto the counter. A 20, 2 5s, some 1s. "I was coming back to pay. You can check the cameras." "The cameras show you taking merchandise and heading for the exit." "The restroom isn't the exit. It's right there." He pointed, his arm shaking. "Sir, you need to calm down or I'll have to call the police." That word, police, seemed to suck the air from the room. Harold felt dizzy. His legs went weak. He grabbed the edge of the counter to steady himself. 62 years ago, he'd charged up a frozen hill in Korea while bullets ripped through the air around him. He'd carried wounded men on his back. He'd watched friends die. He'd earned a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star and had come home to build a quiet, honorable life. And now this man was threatening to call the police on him for trying to use a restroom. "Please," he whispered. "Please, just check with Amy at the pharmacy. She'll tell you. I just picked these up. I was going to pay." Derek glanced at Vince, then back at Harold. The store had gone quiet. That awful library silence where everyone's listening but pretending not to. A teenage employee had stopped stocking shelves to watch. A mother was pulling her child away, whispering something. An older man near the deli counter was filming on his phone. "Vince, check the pharmacy," Derek said finally. While Vince walked away, Harold stood there under the fluorescent lights, feeling every single one of his 97 years pressing down on him. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. His heart was racing in a way that scared him. The doctor had warned him about stress, about his heart. Margaret's voice echoed in his head. "Breathe, Harold. Just breathe." Vince returned 2 minutes later. Amy said she gave him the prescriptions about 10 minutes ago. He paid the copay. Derek's jaw tightened. For a moment, Harold thought it was over. Thought he'd apologize, let him go, let him salvage what was left of his dignity. Instead, Derek said, that doesn't change the fact that he was leaving the store without paying. "I wasn't leaving. The restroom is located near the exit. Our policy is clear. If you remove merchandise from your cart with intent to leave the premises before paying, that constitutes attempted theft." I couldn't believe what he was hearing. His mouth opened and closed, no words coming out. Intent? Intent. He needed to use the restroom. That was all. That was the entire story. "You're calling me a thief," Harold said quietly. "After 60 years of shopping here. After your grandfather knew my name. You're calling me a thief?" "I'm following store policy." Derek crossed his arms. "Now, I can let this go with a warning, but you'll need to leave the store immediately, and you're banned from returning." The words were a punch to the gut. Banned. From the grocery store where he'd bought food for his family for 6 decades, where Margaret used to chat with the butcher about recipes, where his kids had saved their allowance to buy candy from the checkout displays, where he'd become a fixture, a friendly face, a part of the community fabric. "This is wrong," Harold said, his voice breaking. "This is so wrong. Sir, you need to leave. Now. Take your medications and go, or I will call the police."
That's when something inside Harold broke. Not shattered, he'd been through too much for that, but cracked, splintered. He looked down at his prescription bottles, at his trembling hands, at the money still scattered on the counter. He looked up at Derek's cold eyes and Vince's impassive face. He looked around at all the customers who'd stopped their shopping to watch an old man's humiliation. "I fought for this country," Harold said quietly. "I bled for it. I came home and I worked and I raised my family, and I never asked for anything special. I just wanted to be treated with basic human decency." His voice grew stronger, louder. "And you're telling me I can't even use a restroom without being accused of being a criminal? Sir, I'm not done." Harold's hands were shaking violently now, but his voice was steady. "My wife is gone. Most of my friends are gone. I live alone in a house that's too big and too quiet,
and the one thing I look forward to is my Tuesday morning walk to get groceries. That's it. That's all I have. And you're taking that away because I needed to use the bathroom?" The store had gone completely silent. Even the muzak seemed to have stopped. A woman near the dairy section had tears in her eyes. The man with the phone was still recording. Derek's face had flushed red, but he didn't back down. "Store policy is store policy. I'm sorry, but—" "No, you're not." Harold started gathering his prescription bottles, his movements slow and deliberate despite the tremors. "You're not sorry at all." That's when the front doors opened and Sheriff Tom Brennan walked in. Tom had been sheriff of Porter County for 16 years. He was 52 years old, built like a linebacker who'd traded the field for a desk but still hit the gym 3 times a week. His uniform was crisp, his badge gleamed under the store lights, and his expression was neutral as he approached the customer service counter. He'd gotten a call about a disturbance at Schmidt's, possible shoplifter causing a scene. But when he saw who was standing at that counter, his neutral expression crumbled. "Mr. Mitchell." Harold turned, and Tom saw it all. The trembling hands, the scattered money, the humiliation etched into every line of that weathered face. He saw the prescription bottles. He saw Derek Schmidt standing there with his arms crossed and his jaw set. He saw Vince hovering nearby like a bouncer at a bar. And he saw the phones out, people recording, people watching the spectacle. Tom had known Harold Mitchell his entire life. Harold had coached his Little League team when Tom was 9 years old, had shown up to his high school graduation, had attended Tom's wedding 28 years ago, and had shaken his hand with genuine pride. When Tom's father had died suddenly of a heart attack, Harold had been one of the first people at their door with food and quiet, steady support. "What's going on here?" Tom's voice had an edge to it now. Derek straightened up, trying to project authority. "Sheriff, thank you for coming. We had an attempted theft situation." "Attempted theft? With Mr. Mitchell?" "Age doesn't exempt anyone from following the law, Sheriff. He was observed removing merchandise from his cart and heading toward the exit without paying." Tom looked at Harold. "Is that true, Mr. Mitchell?" "I had to use the restroom, Tom. That's all. I put my medications in my bag because the checkout line was long and I didn't want someone to think my cart was abandoned. I was coming right back. I've never stolen anything in my life." Tom turned back to Derek. "Did you check with the pharmacy?" "Yes, and did you know he paid for the medications?" "He paid the copay, but the point is, Tom interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. "You're accusing a 97-year-old decorated veteran of theft because he needed to use the bathroom?" Derek's face went from red to pale. "I was following store policy." "Your store policy." Tom took a step closer to the counter. "Let me ask you something, Derek. Do you know who you're talking to?" "I don't see how that's—" "This man earned a Purple Heart in Korea. He charged enemy positions to save his squad. He came home and worked 42 years at the steel mill without missing a single day. He raised 4 kids, all of them college graduates. He's been a volunteer at the VA hospital for 20 years. He's been married to the same woman for 68 years until she passed 3 years ago. And in all that time, in all those 97 years, has there ever been a single complaint against him? A single incident? A single reason to think he's anything other than one of the most decent, honorable men in this entire county?"
Derek was silent. "I asked you a question." "No," Derek said quietly. "No complaints." Tom nodded slowly. "But you decided today was the day he'd turn criminal? Today, this man who can barely walk 8 blocks without his legs aching, who shakes so bad from Parkinson's he can hardly button his shirt, decided to steal 3 prescription bottles worth maybe $40? Tom's voice was rising now, filling the store. "Does that make any sense to you, Derek? Does that sound reasonable?" People were gathering now. Employees, customers, people who'd been shopping when the commotion started. The teenage cashier, the woman who'd pulled her child away earlier, the old man with the phone. They formed a loose semicircle around the customer service counter,
all eyes on Derek Schmidt. "I was doing my job," Derek said, but his voice had lost its authority. "Your job?" Tom repeated. "Your job is to serve this community, these people who've been shopping here for generations, this man who probably spent more money in this store over the past 60 years than you'll see in your entire life. And instead of treating him with respect, instead of maybe asking a few questions or showing a little human decency, you humiliated him in front of everyone." Derek's mouth opened, closed. Tom turned to Vince. "And you grabbed him? You physically grabbed a 97-year-old man?" Vince looked uncomfortable. "I was told to detain. Did he resist? Did he run? Did he do anything except try to explain?" No, but. There's no but." Tom turned back to Derek. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize to Mr. Mitchell, right now, in front of everyone." "Sheriff, I don't care what you think. Apologize, now." The store was dead silent. Even the refrigerator unit seemed to have stopped humming. Derek looked at Harold, at the sheriff, at the growing crowd of witnesses. His face was the color of old oatmeal. I apologize, Mr. Mitchell. I made a mistake." "Not good enough," Tom said. "Try again, and mean it this time." Derek swallowed hard. "Mr. Mitchell, I sincerely apologize. I should have listened to you. I should have checked the situation more carefully before jumping to conclusions. You've been a loyal customer for decades, and you deserve better. I'm sorry." Harold stood there, his prescription bottles clutched to his chest, tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. He didn't say anything. What could he say? The apology didn't undo the humiliation, didn't erase the past 20 minutes, didn't give him back his dignity. But Tom wasn't done. "Mr. Mitchell isn't banned from this store," Tom announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "In fact, I think this store owes him more than an apology. What do you think, Derek?" Derek looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. What do you suggest?" "How about free groceries for a year?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. Derek's eyes widened. "Sheriff, I can't just can't or won't." Tom crossed his arms, mirroring Derek's earlier stance. "See, here's the thing. Those phones that are out right now, they're recording everything. And in about 10 minutes, this whole incident is going to be online. People are going to see how Schmidt's Family Grocery treats its elderly customers, how you treat veterans, how you treat people who've been shopping here for longer than you've been alive. And so you can either make this right, or you can watch your business tank when this goes viral. Your choice." Derek's Adam's apple bobbed. He glanced around at the phones, at the faces watching him with mixtures of disgust and anticipation, at the teenage employee who looked horrified, at the elderly couple near produce who were shaking their heads. "Free groceries for a year," Derek said, his voice hoarse. "Mr. Mitchell, please, free groceries for a year, and again, I'm deeply sorry." Harold finally spoke, his voice thin and tired. "I don't want your charity, Derek. I want what your grandfather built this store on. Respect, kindness, the benefit of the doubt. That's what I want. But I don't think you can give me that." The words landed like stones in still water. Derek flinched. Tom put a gentle hand on Harold's shoulder. "Come on, Mr. Mitchell. Let me drive you home." "My cart." Harold gestured weakly towards the abandoned cart somewhere in the aisles. "I still need groceries."
"I'll get your groceries," said a voice from the crowd. The woman who'd been near the dairy section stepped forward. She was maybe 60, with kind eyes and a determined set to her jaw. "I'll get everything on your list and deliver it to your house. No charge. It's the least I can do." "Me too," said another voice. The old man who'd been recording. "I'll cover his medications for the next 3 months. He shouldn't have to come back here." "I'll mow his lawn this fall," offered a younger guy in a construction vest. "Free of charge." "I'll drive him wherever he needs to go," added a middle-aged woman with a grocery bag slung over her shoulder. "Doctor's appointments, errands, anything." The offers kept coming. People Harold had never met, strangers who'd witnessed his humiliation and couldn't stand to leave it at that. They wanted to restore something that had been taken. They wanted to push back against the cruelty and indifference they'd just witnessed. Tom felt his throat tighten. This was the community he'd sworn to protect. These were the people who made Porter County something special. "Thank you," Harold whispered. "Thank you all." Tom guided him toward the door, one hand still on his shoulder. Harold moved slowly, his legs unsteady. As they passed the checkout lanes, the teenage cashier called out, "Mr. Mitchell, I'm sorry, I should have said something. I'm really sorry." Harold paused, turned. He looked at her, this kid who was maybe 17, who'd been too scared or too shocked to speak up, and he did something that broke Tom's heart. He smiled, tired and sad, but genuine. "It's okay, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong." They made it outside into the crisp autumn air. Tom's patrol car was parked in the fire lane, lights off. He helped Harold into the passenger seat, careful with his trembling hands, and closed the door gently. Then he walked around to the driver's side and sat behind the wheel, but he didn't start the engine. Not yet. "You okay, Mr. Mitchell?" Harold was staring straight ahead, his prescription bottles in his lap. "I don't know, Tom. I really don't know. What they did in there that was wrong, completely wrong. I just wanted to use the bathroom. That's all. I'm so tired, Tom. I'm so tired of being old, of not being able to do simple things without my hands shaking or my legs giving out, of people looking at me like I'm nothing. You're not nothing. You're a hero. I'm not a hero. I'm just an old man who needed to pee." Tom laughed, despite himself, and after a moment, Harold did too. It was a small sound, fragile, but real. They sat there in the patrol car while people walked past with their grocery carts, loading trunks and buckling children into car seats. Normal Tuesday morning activities. The world kept spinning, indifferent to one old man's pain. "You know what the worst part is?" Harold said quietly. "It's not what Derek did. It's that I believed him for a second. When he called me a thief, when he said I was trying to steal, for just a moment I wondered if maybe I had done something wrong, if maybe I'd forgotten something or gotten confused. I'm 97, Tom. My mind isn't what it used to be, and for that one horrible second, I doubted myself." He turned to look at Tom, tears streaming freely now. "That's what hurts the most. That he made me doubt who I am." Tom didn't have words for that. Nothing that would help, so he just reached over and gripped Harold's shoulder, squeezed gently, and let the old man cry. After a few minutes, Harold wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "I'd like to go home now, if that's okay." "Of course." Tom started the engine. The drive to Maple Street took less than 5 minutes. Tom pulled into the driveway of the small ranch house with its neat lawn and trimmed hedges. A flag hung from the porch, American flag at the top, POW MIA flag beneath it. Tom helped Harold out of the car, walked him to the door, waited while he fumbled with his keys. "You need anything?" Tom asked. "I can stay for a while." "No, I'll be fine. Thank you, Tom, for everything." "Mr. Mitchell, I'm going to look into this. The way they treated you, that's not acceptable. There may be legal options." Harold shook his head. "I don't want to make trouble. I just want to forget this morning ever happened. It's not trouble, it's accountability. Let it go, Tom, please. I'm too old and too tired for a fight."
Tom wanted to argue, but he saw the exhaustion in Harold's face, the weight of the morning pressing down on him. "Okay, but if you change your mind, I know where to find you." Harold managed a small smile. "Thank you again." Tom waited until Harold was inside, until he heard the deadbolt click before walking back to his patrol car. He sat behind the wheel for a long moment, anger simmering in his chest. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. "County Attorney's Office? Hey, Janet, it's Tom Brennan. I need to talk to someone about a potential civil rights violation. While Tom was making calls, something was happening online. The videos that had been recorded in Schmidt's family grocery were spreading. The old man with the phone had uploaded his footage to Facebook with the caption, "Veteran, 97, accused of shoplifting for trying to use the bathroom. This is disgraceful." Within an hour, it had been shared 300 times. Within 2 hours, the local news station had picked it up. By evening, it was on the national news. The comments section was on fire. "This made me cry. How dare they treat him like that? I'll never shop at Schmidt's again. Boycott. That manager should be fired. This is elder abuse. My grandfather has Parkinson's. Watching this made me sick. The sheriff is the only decent person in this whole video." People were finding Schmidt's family grocery on every platform: Google, Yelp, Facebook, and leaving 1-star reviews. The store's phone was ringing off the hook. Derek's personal Facebook page was flooded with messages. Local news crews set up in the parking lot interviewing customers about what they'd witnessed. By Wednesday morning, Derek Schmidt was standing in front of a hastily assembled press conference, reading a prepared statement with cameras shoved in his face. He announced that effective immediately, he was implementing mandatory sensitivity training for all employees. He was establishing a senior discount program. He was making a $10,000 donation to the local VA hospital in Harold Mitchell's name. He was personally apologizing again, with more feeling this time, with his voice actually breaking. It wasn't enough for most people, but it was something. Harold watched the news coverage from his living room couch, the TV flickering in the dim light. His daughter Linda had driven over as soon as she'd seen the videos, and now she sat beside him with her arm around his thin shoulders. "Dad, this is huge. You're a viral sensation." "I didn't feel like a sensation. I felt tired." "People are calling you a hero," Linda continued. "They're saying you exposed how poorly we treat the elderly in this country." "I didn't expose anything. I just needed to use the bathroom." Linda squeezed his shoulder. "Dad, you could sue. Tom says you have a strong case: emotional distress, defamation, elder abuse." "I don't want to sue anybody. I just want to be left alone." But being left alone wasn't an option anymore. The doorbell rang constantly. Reporters requesting interviews, neighbors dropping off food and flowers, strangers wanting to shake his hand. The mayor called to apologize on behalf of the town. The VFW post commander came by to offer support. Even the governor's office reached out, expressing concern and support. Through it all, Harold remained quiet, gracious but distant. He thanked people for their kindness, but he didn't want to talk about what had happened, didn't want to relive it over and over. He'd spent 97 years being a private person, living a quiet life, and he didn't know how to be anything else. On Thursday afternoon, there was a knock at the door that was different from the others. Softer, almost tentative. Harold shuffled to the door and looked through the peephole. It was the teenage cashier from Schmidt's. He opened the door. She stood on his porch in her school clothes, jeans and a sweatshirt with the local high school logo, nervous and young and miserable. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm Emma. I was working Tuesday when it happened." She was shaking, her voice quiet. "I needed to tell you I'm sorry. I should have said something. I should have stood up for you. I just froze. I didn't know what to do, and I'm so sorry." Harold looked at this girl, this child really, carrying the weight of something that wasn't her fault. "Come in," he said gently. Emma followed him inside. The house was small but tidy, full of pictures and memories. Margaret smiled from frames on every wall. Harold gestured to the couch, and Emma sat, her hands twisted in her lap. "You want some tea?" Harold asked. "Oh, no, I don't want to bother you. I just wanted to apologize."
It's no bother." Harold moved to the kitchen, moving slowly, his hands trembling as he filled the kettle. "You like sugar?" Yes, please, 1 spoon." He made the tea with careful precision, brought 2 mugs back to the living room, and handed one to Emma. Then he settled into his recliner, Margaret's chair, actually, but it was more comfortable than his, and took a sip. "You didn't do anything wrong," Harold said after a moment. "But I didn't do anything right either. I just stood there. I let Derek treat you that way, and I didn't say a single word. You're 17 years old. Derek's your boss. You need that job." Harold set his mug down on the side table. "What could you have done that wouldn't have gotten you fired?" Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know. Something. Anything. Emma, listen to me. What happened Tuesday wasn't your fault. It was Derek's fault. Maybe it was mine for not being more clear about what I was doing, but it wasn't yours." He leaned forward slightly. "You came here to apologize when you didn't have to. That takes courage. That tells me you're a good person. Don't let this eat at you. But everyone's talking about it. The whole school has seen the videos, and I'm in some of them, just standing there at my register, looking useless. Are people giving you a hard time?" "Some. Mostly they're just disappointed. Like they expected more from me." She wiped her eyes. "My grandmother has Alzheimer's. She's in a care home. I should have thought about her, about how I'd want someone to treat her." Harold was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that surprised even himself. "You know what I think? I think this whole thing happened for a reason. Not because some cosmic force wanted me to be humiliated. That's ridiculous. But because it's showing people something important. It's showing us how easy it is to fail each other. How easy it is to stay silent when we should speak up. How easy it is to forget that every old person used to be young, used to be strong, used to be someone worth respecting." He picked up his mug again. "You learned something Tuesday. It's a hard lesson, but you learned it. And the next time you see someone being treated unfairly, you'll remember this feeling. You'll remember how much you wish you'd spoken up. And maybe you'll find your voice." Emma was crying openly now. "I quit, you know. I quit Schmidt's yesterday. I can't work for someone who would do that to you. You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror if I stayed." She set her untouched tea on the coffee table. "Mr. Mitchell, if there's anything I can do for you, errands, yard work, anything, please let me know. I want to make this right." "You already have," Harold said softly. "You came here. You apologized. You're trying to be better. That's all any of us can do." They talked for another 20 minutes. Emma told him about school, about her plans to study nursing, about her grandmother. Harold told her stories about Margaret, about Korea, about the world before smartphones and social media. By the time Emma left, she was smiling a little, and so was Harold. The media attention continued through the week, but it started to shift. The focus moved from the incident itself to the larger conversation about how society treats the elderly. Opinion pieces appeared in newspapers. Morning talk shows devoted segments to ageism and elder abuse. Harold became a symbol, not because he'd wanted to, but because people needed one. On Sunday morning, Harold did something he hadn't done in 3 years. He got dressed in his best suit, the navy one he'd worn to Margaret's funeral, and he drove his old Buick the 14 blocks to First Presbyterian Church. He hadn't been back since Margaret died. Couldn't stand the pity in people's eyes. Couldn't handle the empty seat beside him where she'd sat for 6 decades. But this morning felt different. When he walked through the doors, the congregation was already gathered. The organ was playing softly, and when people saw him, something happened that Harold hadn't expected. They stood, all of them. Every single person in that church rose to their feet, and they applauded. Harold stood in the doorway, overwhelmed as the applause washed over him. The pastor was smiling through tears. The choir was clapping. Children, who didn't understand exactly what had happened but knew it was important, were clapping too.
Tom Brennan was there with his wife. Emma was there with her family. The woman who'd offered to get his groceries was there. The construction worker who'd offered to mow his lawn. Dozens of faces, some familiar, some not, all showing him something he'd thought he'd lost on Tuesday morning in Schmidt's family grocery. Respect. Dignity. Love. Harold made his way to a pew, the same one he'd always shared with Margaret, and he sat down. The service proceeded normally after that, hymns and scripture and a sermon about compassion, but Harold barely heard it. He was too busy feeling the warmth of the community around him, the support of people who'd decided that what happened to him mattered. After the service, people lined up to shake his hand, to hug him, to tell their own stories of being overlooked or dismissed or treated poorly because of their age. An 84-year-old woman told him about being ignored by her doctor. A 79-year-old man described being talked over in meetings like he was invisible. A 62-year-old woman shared how her adult children had started making decisions for her without asking. Harold listened to them all, and somewhere in those conversations, something shifted inside him. The humiliation from Tuesday was still there, would probably always be there, but it was joined by something else now. Purpose, connection, the realization that his experience, as painful as it had been, had opened a door to conversations that needed to happen. By Monday, Derek Schmidt had resigned as manager of Schmidt's family grocery. The corporate office, because yes, it turned out old man Schmidt had sold the chain to a larger corporation 15 years ago, announced a complete overhaul of their policies regarding customer relations and elder care. They were bringing in consultants, establishing new training programs, creating a customer advisory board that would include senior representatives. It was corporate spin mostly, damage control, but it was also real change, prompted by one 97-year-old man who just needed to use the bathroom. Harold returned to Schmidt's 3 weeks later. He didn't plan to. Linda was doing his shopping for him, and several neighbors had offered to do the same. But on a Tuesday morning, exactly 3 weeks after the incident, Harold woke up and decided he needed to face it. Needed to walk back into that store and reclaim something that had been taken from him. He dressed carefully, grabbed his canvas bag, and walked the 8 blocks, on legs that were shakier than they'd been 3 weeks ago. But he made it. The store looked the same. Same parking lot, same automatic doors, same fluorescent lights. But when Harold walked in, things were different. The new manager, a woman named Patricia, who'd been brought in from another location, saw him immediately and approached with a warm smile. "Mr. Mitchell, it's an honor to have you here." "I just need some groceries," Harold said quietly. "Of course, please let me know if there's anything at all, we can do to make your experience comfortable." Harold nodded and grabbed a cart. He moved through the aisles slowly, deliberately, retracing his steps from that Tuesday morning. Bread in aisle 3, soup in aisle 5, milk from the dairy section, the pharmacy counter where Amy still worked and smiled when she saw him. When his cart was full, he approached the checkout. Emma was there. She'd rehired her after Derek left, and she'd accepted on the condition that she could finish high school first, and her face lit up when she saw him. "Mr. Mitchell." "Hi." "Hello, Emma." She scanned his items carefully, bagged them gently. When she gave him the total, Harold paid with cash, counting out the bills with trembling hands. Emma didn't rush him, didn't hover, just waited patiently. "Thank you," Harold said when the transaction was complete. "No, Mr. Mitchell. Thank you."